Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Cabarrus County Schools Board of Education work session. And we're holding our meeting tonight at the Harold E. Winkler Middle School, the home of the Wolves. Beautiful auditorium where we're at tonight, and I want to thank all of you for being here. And so at this time, I call the meeting to order. Our first order of business tonight is setting the agenda. And before we set the agenda, I'd like to call for a motion that we remove item number 5.2, which is the escrow funds, that we remove that from the agenda. And I'll make that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a second.
Mr. Chairman, hold on one second. Let me make sure what we're...
This is the escrow item.
Is that the full presentation?
Yes. There's no need to continue that, Mr. Kiger, since, there's been some changes in the funding.
Okay. You have a...
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I understand the motivation for this is that it's been determined that the school board doesn't have the authority to allocate where those escrow funds go. That's a decision by the commissioners. But I also know that there was a presentation put together by people that have been working on this Central Cabarrus Park Turf project. I think it's a worthwhile project. I'd like to at least hear.
Well, the only thing, Mr. Phillips, and this is then, whatever the board wants to do is fine with me. I'm one member of the board. Whatever the board decides is what we'll do. But the way that I'm looking at it is if the funding is not there, the presentation will need to be made to the commissioners at some point, not this board, because this board won't be making that decision. It's county money, so it'll have to be a commissioner's decision to use the money for whatever purpose they deem necessary. But since it's, being called back by the commissioners, then therefore it's not there, it's not usable. And we can't commit the commissioners.
No, I understand that we can't make a decision tonight of any sort on how that money is spent, but we could have a discussion among us to find out whether there's a consensus from the board that this is something we would support if the commissioners choose to do so.
Well, we can do that. I was hoping we'd just, write a letter whenever we send the money back, write a letter to the county manager and give them our thoughts. And obviously, I think every board member here supports the idea of using this money for the turf. I think everybody agrees that's something that would bring vitality, and it would also bring economics to the county, and it would help in many ways, there's no doubt. But unfortunately, though, it's not our decision at this point. But whatever the board wants to do is fine with me.
I'm wondering, could we instead move it to the report section, make it 4.6, and just understand that there's not going to be a vote. It's just information.
Just get a report or see the PowerPoint, pretty much.
I think it's certainly well worth our while to see the presentation so that we know, the work that's gone on to this point, and we know full well we can't commit the commissioners to do anything. From our discussions with them, they were interested in knowing if we could, what would we do? Well, we can't, but we still would like. It's kind of like what we're trying to say. That money's gone. We know it. We got a letter from the attorney. It's not on the table anymore. But we would at least be able to say we've had a discussion. Our board, as a group, would support that project if funding became available or something else happened. So to me, I think it's well worth having the presentation. But we just need to say up front as we have that piece of funding from the escrow account is gone.
I'd support moving that to the report section.
Okay, well, in that case, then we're going to have to, we might need Mark your assistance on this because the motion's on the floor with a second to remove it.
Right. I still think it'd be appropriate for you to vote on that motion, whether you want
another motion to put it on the report section.
Okay, so there'll be a second motion to put it.
Yes.
Okay. Sounds good.
So we're taking it off of the items for discussion, which would go action or consent for next week. Right. We're taking it off of that. So I made the motion. I think Mr. Harrison seconded the motion. All in favor of taking it off of the agenda and the action items to be considered, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yes. What?
No, we're taking it,
I'm opposing taking it off the agenda. Then we have a second motion to move it to reports.
Right.
So my no vote was a no on removing it from the agenda.
removing it from the items for consideration. Because you want to consider it and we don't have no funds.
No, I'm asking, the motion was to remove it from the agenda. That was all the motion was, and it got a second. And I am opposing removing it from the agenda. Once we defeat that, if we do, I'll be happy to make a motion that we move it to the report section.
Okay, where are we at, Mark?
And Mr. Chair, I'll be happy to withdraw my second.
Well, just go ahead and compromise.
All right.
We voted.
Well, that's what we're doing. We're
Do you
just
want, it sounds like it may be a
complicating
single, maybe the option is to just do a single motion to move it from the action item to the report section.
And that's what I was
If
trying to
you
do.
wanna-
Just have one motion.
If
just
you
have
want to
one
make
motion.
a single motion to
Okay.
move it from the action item to the report item, I think that's what you're saying.
Okay,
It sounds
well,
like
I'll
it's-
amend my motion then. How about that?
Perfect.
I'll make a motion that we remove the item 5.2, which is the escrow item, from the items to be considered for the business meeting on the 16th to the report section, which would be item 4.6. I believe that's what Mr. Phillips said, 4.6, the end of the report section. Yes, it would be 4.6.
And I'll second that.
All right. Now I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, now that we've got that part straight, we need to approve the rest of the agenda. So may I have a motion that the agenda be adopted with the amendments? Mr. Walter makes the motion.
Second.
Mr. Harrison seconds. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank God we got through that. My goodness, okay. All right, now the first item on the list tonight is we have some guest speakers. And I wanted to tell you that normally we don't do guest speaker time at the work sessions, but we decided, though, that since they were so much interest in talking about the athletics at Central Cabarrus, that we wanted to hear from you. And so now it's just as good a time as September the 16th. So we're glad you're here. And the guest speakers that I have scheduled to speak tonight is I have Mr. Bobby McGee, and he's going to speak on behalf of the Central Cabarrus Boosters Club. And Bobby, if you're here, you can come up to the podium, and you'll have 5 minutes to speak. And then I have 3 other speakers that's lined up, and I believe they'll be speaking individually, and they'll have 3 minutes each. And then I'll call those in just a few minutes. So, Mr. McGee, when you get ready, Ms. Monroe, she's our board clerk, and she's got her timer going, so you got 5 minutes to tell us whatever you need to. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bobby McGee. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Central Cabarrus Athletic Booster Club and all concerned parents. I'd first like to thank you for allowing me to step here and speak tonight. And just want to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a 1990 graduate of Central Cabarrus. I enjoyed my time there immensely, and I'm proud that my boys will get to spend 4 years there also. Now, I've got one question for all of you. Can I get a show of hands for any of you that have ever toured every facility at Central Cabarrus? Can I get a hand? If you toured our football stadium. Because I don't think you understand the condition of our facilities. We are in a dire need of help, and we're not getting any. I have sent lists, I've sent emails, and I continue to get political answers of we don't have money. We don't have money. Unfortunately, there's been some projects completed around the other schools that are 4 and 5 and 10 years old that are getting lots of upgrades. And quite frankly, we're frustrated. We would like to see our students have the same opportunities that Cox Mill, that Concord, that Mount Pleasant, that J.M. Robinson, that Hickory Ridge has. If you come see our football stadium, I dare say that none of you would allow your wives or your daughters to go into our restrooms to use them. They are that bad. We can't get help. We have tried. I don't know where to go. We've tried. I've had county commissioners actually contact me and come and visit our school with me. I've not had one opportunity for anyone to say, hey, let me see the problems you have. Where's our representation? Because I feel like we're getting none. We have no paved parking at our football stadium. We have people with wheelchairs that you have to drag them through the gravel to get to the stadium. You go to any other school and the parking lots are paved right up to the gates. Is this right? Is there a reason why we do not have paved parking lots? Or is it just the fact that no one wants to come take a look and it's close a blind eye? I'd like for everybody at Central to stand up right now. All these people are concerned about the welfare of our school and the condition of our school. My understanding that Concord High School just received a $575,000 cafeteria upgrade. Is that correct? Is that correct? I think it is. We got new cafeteria tables. Oh, I'm sorry. They were the used ones from Concord, were brought to our school for us to use. They weren't good enough for Concord, but they were well enough for Central. Who makes these decisions? I don't think that anyone cares what happens at Central Cabarrus. I would like to think that you do. I've been told you do, but actions speak louder than words. And right now, we're seeing no action. Every day I go into our weight room, there are molded ceiling tiles in our weight room that our kids breathe the mold off of. They spend an hour and a half a day in there. This has been going on since February. Now the school board has, or the county has decided to look into that after I brought a county commissioner down to take a look at it. Folks, this is unacceptable. Our schools are deteriorating and we're not getting any help. The school, Central Cabarrus, just received approximately spent about, I'm assuming it's about $500,000 on the strings program. Is that correct? Is that close? What's the number on that?
On the strings program?
The instruments and the string program.
100,000.
100,000 in instruments? Okay. Well, we've got 39 students in that program. That is stellar per student ratio for what that school needs. I don't know who consulted who. I don't even know if the administration was consulted. But folks, if the money's going to be spent, the people that are there know better than somebody at another office knows what needs to be done at that school. There are many needs at that school. Our softball bleachers, you would not sit on them because they are such a danger for anyone to sit on. You go to any other school, they have bleachers with nice aluminum bleachers and sides on it. We've got wooden bleachers that you will fall through if you make one wrong step. Our bathrooms at our baseball field, we have one stall in the men's restroom and it doesn't have a door. The door doesn't lock. Like I said, I find all of this unacceptable. And we will hold you accountable because election time is coming. And these folks right here speak. They have friends, they have family. Election time is coming. If we don't see results, we will get results, one way or the other. If we have to vote people out, we will find the people that need to be on this board that will represent our side of the county. I feel like you've done a disservice to our students and our school. There is a pretty nice dance facility just built at Cox Mill. The school is 5 years old, $35 million project. They got a brand new dance room that I've been given 2 different numbers within 4 days on what the cost was. Still haven't got a final cost. And I'm curious to know as if everybody on this board knows what the cost was, the true cost. But we can't get the necessities we need at our school. We can't get paved parking. Our handicap parking is at a gravel parking lot that you can barely walk through, much less roll a wheelchair through. I don't know what it's going to take to get some help at Central. I don't foresee any way that the school board will be able to build a school in the near future within the next 10 to 15 years because of the cost. There are other schools that are probably ahead of us on that list. So the new school thing's not going to fly, guys. It's time to take action and time to step up for Central Cabarrus and give us fair representation. Who believes in that out here? Folks, we're not going away. I challenge each and every one of you to bombard their emails until we get results. Every day, whatever it takes. If it's emails we need to send, if it's every meeting we need to stand in on, that's what we'll do. We want representation. I want someone to come out and take a look and say, yeah, I'd love to send my daughter here. I'd love to send my son here, because it's not true. We love the school and we want to see it prosper. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for Mr. McGee for your presentation tonight. And keep in mind, this is not a time for a debate. This is not a time for the board to talk back. I know you asked a lot of questions, and we wrote some of those down, I'm sure. But it's a time for us to listen to you, and we heard what you had to say. I have 3 other speakers lined up. Is Mr. Philip Bowen here? Mr. Bowen, come on up. And are you speaking as an individual or on behalf?
As a concerned parent.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Okay.
Ms. Monroe, if you'll do the timing.
I do appreciate the opportunity to speak to each of you tonight. Didn't get a chance to meet all of you before the meeting, but do appreciate the opportunity. I certainly won't try to say again the things that Bobby has just said, but what I would like to do is start out with a true story for each of you to hear that happened last football season at Central Cabarrus. Like Bobby, I have a son who's currently a junior at Central, and then I have a younger son who's currently a 7th grader at C.C. Griffin who will be attending Central in the future. Last year during JV football season, myself along with 2 other parents were standing in our football facility having a discussion about our team when 3 cheerleaders from Northwest Cabarrus High School walked by us. And we couldn't help but overhear their conversation. Their conversation basically had 2 things. The first was, I am so glad that I don't attend Central because I can't imagine what it would be like to cheer here. And then the second comment from one of the other cheerleaders was, I would rather, quote unquote, hold it in than ever use these bathrooms. Now, each of you attended a high school somewhere. It may have been here in Cabarrus County, it may have been somewhere else. But think back on your days as a high school student and think about what that type of impression of your school would have meant to you. The students that we have at Central Cabarrus are no different than any other high schools here in the county. They put in hundreds of hours in preparation and training to go out and put the green and gold on and represent their school. And they should at least be able to step out on playing fields, tennis courts, tracks that are on par with the other schools in this county. Bobby brought up a good point earlier when he said, how many of you have had the opportunity to come out to Central and see our facilities? Well, let me tell you about a couple of things that you may or may not realize. We have 4 tennis courts at Central Cabarrus. It requires 6 in order to be able to host a tennis match. So the students who are going through Central Cabarrus right now will never have a home game on the tennis team. Our track facility has 6 lanes. In order to be able to host a track meet at your school, you have to have 8 lanes. And then on top of that, if you saw the 6 lanes that we do have, you wouldn't want to host a track meet. So again, we've got students who are out there, boys and girls who are doing their best to represent Central Cabarrus on the track team, and they will never have a home track meet. In the 4 years that they attend Central Cabarrus, they will never host a track meet. So when we think about the budget stuff that we're talking about, when we look at these different projects and we think about the things that the other schools in the county want, and in some cases I'm sure they deserve, let's think about parity and let's think about prioritizing the money where it is most needed. We don't begrudge any other school in the county for what they have, but we would like to be equal with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowen. Our next speaker is lined up is Mr. Jeff Barbie. Mr. Barbie, are you here? There he is, okay? And when you start, Ms. Monroe starts her clock.
First of all, I'd like to thank all of you for allowing us who are ardent supporters of Central Cabarrus to have an opportunity to speak to you here tonight. I graduated from Central Cabarrus in 1975, and this high school is very near and dear to my heart, my family's heart. My 2 sisters are Central grads, as are many of my cousins and other family members. I met the woman sitting right back here who would become my wife of 34 years at Central Cabarrus High School, and my son graduated from Central Cabarrus in 2005. To say that the forest green and gold courses through our veins would be a real understatement. We are proud to be Vikings. Central Cabarrus has always been a school with a fierce pride and tradition. At one time, we were the only school in Cabarrus County to have an ROTC program and the only school in the entire region with a modern planetarium and space science program. Central Cabarrus High School was a shining star for Cabarrus County education in so many, many ways. Over the past 12 years, with the opening of First J.M. Robinson High School and more recently Hickory Ridge and Cox Mill, it appears to many of us, all of us here tonight wearing green and gold, that Central has become almost an afterthought, a has-been, so to speak. Unlike these newer schools, we don't have the benefit of well-to-do families who can afford to help with large amounts of financial support, nor do we enjoy the political influence that others might. I realize that human nature makes it very, very easy to love the bright and shiny thing. Sadly, the reality is that Central Cabarrus is no longer that bright and shiny new thing. That does not, however, mean that our students don't deserve the same degree of love and respect and financial support as the other students in this county. There are many of us, who continue to give of our time, our sweat, and our hard-earned money so the students of Central Cabarrus can work and play on an even footing with other students in this county. Many of us who no longer even have a direct connection to Central Cabarrus. I told you my son graduated in 2005. I'm not on the staff there. I'm not a teacher or administrator. I'm an alumnus and a concerned individual who loves that high school with every fiber of my being. We love Central. We believe in Central. We care about what happens at Central. We are Central. Viking pride that I knew and believed in 1975 still lives in me and all of these other people behind me here today. We are not here tonight to ask for a handout. We're here to ask for a hand up. There is an opportunity for you to help us and to show the students of Central Cabarrus that they are not has-beens. We expect you to step up and support our school to the same degree you support the others in this county. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barbie. Our next speaker is Mr. Kevin Jones. I think Kevin's here.
Good evening. I'd like to thank you for letting me talk to you as well. Like Bobby, like Jeff, I'm an alumnus of Central Cabarrus, graduated in 1985. I've got a daughter who is a junior now at the school and loves her athletic programs there as well. She's a member of the softball team. Piggybacking on what Bobby talked about with our bleachers there, I would throw something out to you. Come to one of our softball games this year, if you don't give us new bleachers before then, and see if you feel safe sitting on those bleachers. That program of softball brings in a lot of money to our school. It's a good softball program, and there's not a day that goes by when we don't have a game there that there's not 40, 55, 60 people sitting on those bleachers. Some small kids. I wouldn't let my small 5-year-old sit on those bleachers even at a practice with nobody there. They don't have any railing, they don't have any backing, and there's about a 2-foot gap between the bleachers. I do not let her sit on those bleachers. The other set of bleachers that we have down the first base line are old ratty set of metal bleachers with no railing on them and are bent in many, many places. Our concession stand, you go to some of the other sporting events at some of the softball fields at other schools here, they have a nice air-conditioned brick concession stand with nice windows. We have an 8x10 utility building that was renovated to make it a concession stand. That gives maybe 2 people 3 or 4 feet of walking area in there to help sell the concessions. So I think if you can just take time to come out there and look at our facilities, our football field, our baseball field, our softball field, track, tennis, the whole thing, the parking lot, as Bobby said, everything needs to be upgraded. and we look for you to help us out with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Once again, thank all of you for coming, and thank you for the guest speakers there. And I made some good notes. Not that I didn't already have them, but I made them again anyway for refreshing my memories. Now we're going to move on, board members, to our report section. And our first item on the report section is 4.1. We got Ms. Kelly Klutz coming to the podium, and this is the QSCB monthly financial update. So when you're ready, Ms. Klutz, we're ready.
Thank you. We're at the position where most of these projects are bid and underway significantly. There's just a few that we're still encumbered and working on, and Mr. Witke will talk to you about the status of those. As far as the financial report goes, there's very little change to it from last month to this month, but I will entertain any questions that you have.
Board members, do you have any questions in reference to the QSCB projects? Let's start on Mr. Phillips. You have any questions? No. Mr. Harrison?
No, sir.
Mr. Walter?
The only question I have is the date here is August 20th. I mean, this is several weeks ago. I think you're closer to the next update.
It is. I agree with that statement that you just made.
Kind of sharing pretty old information with us.
And the reason that's required is we have to have this information available to the county prior to their deadline for their meeting. We have to have this information to you prior. So you need the information a week before, and we have to prepare it a week before. So there's significant turnaround time when we have to meet all of our deadlines. So unfortunately, I'd love to give you more current data, but with the deadlines that we have imposed right now, that's...
So have there been any other changes since this time?
I did not have that question available to me until just now, so I would have to go back and look.
That's fine.
My guess is that there probably were a payment or two, okay. So it would take it out of the encumbered line item and put it into the pay line item, but that would be my guess as far as the significance to that.
That's fine. I didn't mean to put you on the spot or anything. I was just looking at this date. That's 2 weeks.
I agree.
Okay, Mr. Kiger, you have a question?
I think I've asked this the last 2 months. I'm going to just make it a recurring question. Is there anything that you can possibly, and this is maybe more for Lynn, that you possibly think is not going to hit the April deadline?
That is a Mr. Witke question. I'll let him come on up.
I'm expecting a no because that's what I got last month.
That's what I'm expecting too.
Thank you, Kelly. I can honestly say no, we certainly don't expect to be bumping up against the deadlines. To kind of go into the next, if you like, I can certainly talk about the milestones now or wait a few minutes if you have other questions.
Let's get the questions out of the way for the financial part. And then
I maybe should have waited until you were at the podium. I apologize for jumping the gun. So we'll leave my question and you can come back to it.
Thank you.
Any other
Thank
questions?
you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Ms. Carpenter, you have some questions on the update? Mr. Shoemaker?
No questions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Klutz, for your report. Now we'll have Mr. Witke up. He'll do the milestones on QSCB.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To give a brief summation, the Central Cabarrus High School Windows and Doors projects is now complete. Our contractor, we brought in a separate contractor to do the work, and all that punch list work is now complete. We are simply working through our attorneys and the contractor's bonding agent, to work out a final payment. We do have the payment request submitted. We'll be working out a negotiated reduction in that payment before we send them a check. So I would like to say it's a matter of weeks at most, but more than likely it'll take a little bit longer than that. But certainly we're hoping by November to have all that cleared up and completed. The gymnasium addition, that percentage completion is low. We've had a lot of work done in the last month, so really the entire project, including the addition, is roughly 97% complete. The completion date was originally the 30th of August. I think given the amount of rain and inclement weather and all of the problems that we had with existing subterranean equipment that had to be moved, I think the contractor did a real excellent job in completing that work. I know that they were anticipating having an occupancy permit for the facility, entire facility, by the end of this week or early next week. And by the way, I should mention that the gymnasium itself is occupied currently by the school. The boiler replacement at Mount Pleasant High School, the parts are arriving, and the work has begun to reconstruct the new boilers in that location. So we anticipate that completion date is probably a little optimistic, but we are anticipating completion early in October. The weight room and vocation structure at Concord High School, that work is probably around 30 to 35% complete. The substantial completion, again, because of delays with rain, I think they were hit even more so because they started later than some of the other projects. And so when the heavy rains came in the late spring, early summer, they were the ones hit the worst. And so that completion date has now been pushed out to early November. They're hopeful of beating that date, but because of the anticipated delays and the impact of those, rather, that's the anticipated completion date. The various electrical panel upgrades at a number of schools has been completed. Final payment it says we're awaiting final payment. I believe we've gotten those in now, and we're processing those. And the partial roof payment replacement, at Jan Freeze, that of course was bid, recently awarded, and the contractor anticipates starting the project in the middle of this month and completing sometime in early to mid-October. And the rest of the projects, as I've mentioned before, are no longer being considered. Any questions?
Okay, basically, Mr. Witke, what you're saying is all of these QSCB projects will be finished sometime mid to late November.
Yes, sir.
Which is considerably way ahead of April 2014. So now you got your note you're looking for. They will be on time. Okay.
If I could say one other thing, Mr. Chairman. There are some dollars that, as Kelly mentioned, there are things that are unencumbered at this point. Until we finish the projects, really, we won't have the ability to know exactly what that amount is. We are looking at a couple of the existing projects in looking at ways that we can embellish them in one fashion or another to spend down the entire amount of those funds. They can only be assigned, of course, to the projects that are on this list. So we're trying to figure out a way to utilize those and come up with a zero balance.
Yeah, we surely don't want to return no funds.
No, sir.
We don't. We have a hard enough time getting funds, and we don't need to be returning any unnecessarily.
Correct.
With that being said, board members, do you have any questions? And we'll start on Mr. Shoemaker's side. Do you have any questions on the milestone report?
On the Northwest project, there was two components to that. It was the gymnasium and the auditorium. How are we doing on the auditorium? Is that complete at this point?
Yes, sir. That is complete. The unit is operational.
So the HVAC unit is operational in there and balanced?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Correct.
And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Shoemaker. Ms. Carpenter? Mr. Kiger?
Just a quick comment, Mr. Chairman, and you make a good point. Between closing out these and keeping an eye on April and knowing the dollars, with it being September, we probably better have a pretty heavy discussion about that. I'd say maybe at our next meeting. Is that too soon to have a handle on the dollars? No? Kelly's giving me a nod of the head. I just, to be able to prioritize, pick something, have this board approve it, and then let Lynn have time to bid and let the contract and get it done prior, because it doesn't only have to be complete, the bill has to be paid by April, I can't remember, 1st. So anyway, I just think we need to have that on our horizon.
Thank you, Mr. Kiger. Mr. Walter?
Just clarification on the Northwest gym. It's occupied and the students are in the building using the gym now, or is that what you said?
Yes, the school is utilizing the gymnasium and related classroom spaces.
Okay, and then you have the Concord High School vocational building. They push that out to November?
Yes, sir.
But that's going to be for use next semester for the students? Is that the plan?
Depending on how the athletics department looks at it, they could potentially use it in December, but it might be used for some of the teams that do weightlifting during the off seasons. But it would certainly be available for regular use by all students in the next semester. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Walter. Mr. Harrison.
Thank you, Lynn. The items here that are postponed projects, what generally are the reasons that they are postponed?
In the case of Beverly Hills Elementary, that project, when we looked at it and looked at the needs of some of the other QSCB projects, we felt that we could certainly maintain and continue to operate the equipment that is in the building right now. Long-term, I think there's going to be, if we continue to use that structure, expand the building, however the board chooses to deal with it, it's an older school, it needs upgrading, and that's when we would really look at a complete replacement of all of the existing
So taking that as an example, I hear you saying that you do your best to extend the life of the facilities before, obviously, we replace or incur other expenses, but the postponement of some improvements is contingent on funding?
Yes, in many cases it is.
And where does funding come from, generally speaking, please, for these projects?
It typically comes through the county.
From the county?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Appreciate you so much.
QSCB projects or normal projects?
QSCB projects.
Mr. Chairman, can we get a clarification because we just said something in front of a very large group of people. He's asking about funding. Are you talking about QSCB projects or are you talking about projects in general?
Projects in general.
Okay. Well, because there's a very specific thing for QSCB and a whole different story for projects in
and I
general.
apologize for mixing those two.
I just wanted to make sure I understood.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a one-time type deal, that government qualified school bonds that we got several years ago, and we're winding down these projects, and it's been going on for about 4 years now, I think. And we're just about to wind all of these projects down, and they were specific projects from day one. And the ones that you're talking about are the postponed projects. They were postponed primarily because of the cost on other projects that required extra funding, so we had to take it from those projects and to meet the funding on the bigger projects.
And my apologies, I should have made it more clear what I did.
Yeah, you can't get them mixed up because...
Thank you.
But anyway, thank you, Mr. Harrison. Mr. Phillips, you have any comments or questions on the milestone?
Well, just a couple of comments. One was I know that they are working like as fast as they can on the Northwest High School project, because I went over there on Labor Day and I found them working on Labor Day. So obviously they're trying to get that done as fast as possible, and I'm glad to see that. I'm a little concerned about the Mount Pleasant boilers cutting a little close. If we have a cold snap, I hope that you have a plan B in the back of your mind.
Yes, we do. But again, the forecasts are such that we feel that certainly the folks that are working on the project are very capable. We've worked with them before in doing other projects. And they are really going to push, obviously, to complete ahead of their target date. But it was simply waiting for the equipment to come to arrive. Now they're on site with that equipment, and they're working probably as feverishly as the folks at Northwest.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Phillips, and thank you, Mr. Witke. Any other questions, Ms. Carpenter?
Yes. Lynn, what is going on with the punch list at Central? That's been since April, and you're still not complete with that punch list?
The reason we couldn't do anything about the project list is you have to give the original contract holder, in this case the general contractor who had the project, sufficient time to respond. Well, they would send one man and a toolkit, for a large number of things, and this went on for weeks on end. And as long as he had a present on the job site, we could not, based on what our attorneys were telling us, we could not easily evict him from that or remove him from his contract right. And so we tried to work with him. We had people doing everything from staying there overtime to open the doors to get people into the building to assisting them with tools and everything else. And it just didn't work out. And finally, after much of that, we did get their surety involved sometime around midsummer, and got agreement from the surety that we should not pay them any money until they do complete the work. And after that went on for a few weeks, and there was a demonstration that no work was going to be done, then our attorney said to go ahead and hire another contractor and get the work completed. So it was tied up more from a legal standpoint than anything else. And I don't mean by the attorneys. What I mean is by the legal rights of the original contractor.
Okay, so are we going to have that complete then?
It's done now. The only thing that's not done is the paperwork.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yes,
okay, so that one is 100% now?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Mr. Carpenter, you okay now? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Witke, for your report. And while we're getting ready to change over to our next presenter, now would be a good time for me to I'm all the time asked, and I know board members are all the time asked, and when you're talking about funding projects, they're talking about, like in tonight's example of school athletics at Central and others, they always ask me, well, Lynn, where does the lottery money go? Why don't we ever see any of the lottery money? And that's a question that I'm sure all of you are confronted with. And I want to just tell you just real quickly, and then we're going to have our next presenter. But in the last 16, 17 years, and we got Miss Klutz here that could, I think I'm pretty right on. And I don't know whether you and the county realize, but in the last 16 years, we have spent on new school construction, bus garage, renovation, education center, and all of that, close to $496 million, almost $500 million, which a good portion of that is we're still indebted for. And so when you talk about funding, that's a huge debt service that the county is paying. And that is one of the reasons why our funding is so limited, is because where a lot of school districts in North Carolina, they can concentrate on things that normal school boards do. And this school board for the last 16 years, not this particular school board, but the school boards in the past, pretty much all we've been able to deal with is school construction. Now, am I right, Dr. Shepard? I mean, we've built and opened 12 to 14, maybe even 15 schools in the last 16 years. It's a huge debt service. And so that's why our funding is so tight and so limited. And I know that's a story that nobody wants to hear, especially when you see other schools getting things, which in all, we came up with a construction standards policy, whereas that the schools we would have all of these things laid out instead of piecemealing, do a little bit today and a little bit next week and a little bit next year, that kind of thing. Because what we found out over the years, that when you would stretch those things out a little bit next year or so on, it never gets done because other priorities take its place. So anyway, I just felt like, since we're talking about this qualified school construction bonds, which is coming to an end real soon, that would be a good time for me to explain to you about the lottery money. That lottery money goes to debt service. We don't even see it. It comes straight from the North Carolina Education Lottery to our county commissioners, and then when our county commissioners get that money, it's automatically appropriated to debt service because it was allocated for school construction in the beginning. And since we've built all of these schools that we owe for, that's where it's going to. Is that right, Ms. Klutz? Okay. So I just wanted to make sure that, not only for you folks that are here tonight, but for the viewing audience that will see this on YouTube and on the website, well, maybe hopefully have a little better understanding of where the lottery funds go to and why the funding is tighter in our county than it is in some counties. Okay, with that being said, our next presenter tonight, we're proud to have Miss Grace Minot with us. She's the chairman of the Cabarrus Education Foundation, and here last year our board had asked her to check into some costs and some different things for the Glenn Center. And so, Ms. Minot, we're glad to have you with us tonight, and so the podium's all yours.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Kelly, can you help her maybe drop the mic a little bit? I think that's what...
Can't do anything about being so short. Thank you. That's great. That's perfect. Thank you for letting me come tonight. I always feel at home when I come in front of this group. And I'm sitting down there thinking, well, now we ought to do this. And then I think, Grace, you're not up there anymore. You don't have any say-so. But I do know what you're handling, all the difficulties you're handling, and I appreciate the way you work so hard at it. I am here tonight to follow up on instructions or a vote that you made back in October, I think it was 2012, maybe earlier, to ask the Education Foundation to do a little preliminary legwork about the old Concord High School, which is known now as the Glenn Center. There may be new people in the community who don't even know where the old Concord High School is, and I would ask them to make a nice little drive into the historic district of downtown Concord and go look off Spring Street on Marsh Avenue, and you'll see a lovely view of this old high school at the end of that driveway. It is still being used as a school in certain sections that are usable and is known as the Glenn Center. There are going to be, I understand, some choices that are going to have to be made in the future about that building, that either it will have to be sold, it will have to be demolished, or it will have to be renovated. I believe those are the three choices with that building. And we're always faced with two things. We're faced with change, and we're faced with choice. If you look around as things have evolved, you'll see that we have charter schools coming, we have private schools, we have church schools, we have home schools. Those are all choices and changes. But the public schools continue to educate the vast majority of our children. And so we need to consider change and choice as well. We have done that with some of the new magnet programs and some of the vocational programs that have been put into our schools, the culinary, the BRIC program at Mount Pleasant, the STEM program. These are all choices that have been made by the board and the community to try to give choices to our children. So here tonight I'm going to report on what I think is a unique opportunity to do both change and choice in the potential renovation of the old Concord High School. You did fund, the system funded an engineer to come in from Raleigh to look at the building, first and foremost, to see if it had the structural integrity that was necessary to do a renovation, and it passed with flying colors. The structure, the basic structure of that building is in good condition. Len Witke can give you much more information about that than I, but it did pass. And the preliminary items that are necessary, just a few things that are necessary to even begin to consider that building have been quantified, such as the cost of an elevator. You can't do any kind of building nowadays with more than one floor without the elevator. But that's all the work that has been done up to this point. So when we were asked to look into this, we said, yes, we'll be glad to do that. Now, the Cabarrus County Education Foundation is a nonprofit. It's a 501c3. We can receive funds from the community and dispense them as is seen fit. And we were asked to investigate this feasibility of using this old building and turning it into a fully usable school that would serve probably, perhaps, maybe, I don't know how to put the word, as an arts magnet for the entire school system. And this was Dr. Shepard's thinking, and I believe later he's going to expound on that vision for this school. Some of the things that have happened in this time period is that different members of the foundation board have gone out behind the scenes and talked with people who would need to know and be on board if such a project is undertaken. One of the first things we did was talk to Noel Scott at the Arts Council. We have a very thriving Arts Council, as you know. It's one of the prides of this county. And if you remember, it's housed in the old courthouse building. And when I moved to Concord in 1976, was exactly the time when the wrecking ball was about to remove that absolutely marvelous historical building. So I've seen what can happen when a community comes together and says, you're not going to do that to this historic building. It's too important to us and our history. And now it's on so many companies' letterheads, it's on the advertisements, and it's a huge part of the economic development of our community. And we wanted the Arts Council to know that we were thinking of doing something in the arts area, and we didn't want it to be a competition to the Davis Theater. We wanted the Arts Council to be on board, and Noel Scott is very much in favor of this. They had at one time their offices in the old Concord High School. She's very well aware of the marvelous space that is there available for a very large auditorium and the possibilities of the entire building. We also spoke with elected officials. Unfortunately, didn't get around to every single one of them because of scheduling and appointments and being able to get to them, but with the commissioners, Concord councilmen, and got a lot of enthusiastic support from them. We talked with alumni, various alumni of the school, members of the Historic Society and the Historic District. We had a gentleman named Ted Alexander who came to visit with us from Preservation, North Carolina, which is a nonprofit that is in the, its entire purpose is the preservation of historic buildings in the state of North Carolina. He serves this area of the state, and he came, we met at the building in the auditorium, and to say that he was enthusiastic about that space is to downplay his opinion. He was very helpful in telling us other places that have done this and giving us some suggestions. And if down the road you choose to continue with this project, Preservation North Carolina would be a very valuable resource. So we had general conversations everywhere we went. I talked to people, I mentioned it to people, and I have met with nothing but tremendous enthusiasm over this project. People are really anxious to have this building preserved. They think the idea of its use is good, and they think it would be a plus for the community. I've also had a few conversations with some potential private funding sources, which I don't want to mention specifically at this time, but there are some large contributions that could be received for this project. Now, about the building, one of my interests besides education is architecture, classical architecture, and that is a premier 1930s school building. It is a classic 1930s school building. It has a beautiful auditorium space. If you have not been there, you need to run over there one day and just take a look at that space. I think it holds about, I don't know, maybe 800 people. It has a balcony. It has a projection area. The beauty of the stage is its depth, its fly space above, which can drop things down on the stage. It's at the back of the building, where it would be very easy to move onto the outside and put in lifts for traveling organizations and shows that could come that have sets and so forth. It's a very, very usable and potentially expandable space. But the beauty of this project to me, and the excitement in this project, especially as I talk to people in the community, is that it would involve the whole community. They would be involved in the planning, in the funding, and in the use of this building. And one of the things that I liked to think of when I was on the board with you, when we were building all these buildings, we talk about cost per square foot. We talk about ultimate cost, total cost. But very seldom do we take the number of students who are going to attend a school and figure out how much it costs per seat. And to me, that's a very usable number because it's a comparative number. And I can say, all right, for this school, we spent so much per seat. For this school, we spent so much per seat. And it's something I can get my hands on because no two schools are exactly alike. Some of them are similar, but not exactly alike. So if we can look at this project, and when we have a good guesstimate of its cost, and then we can estimate how many students will be in that school and get a per seat cost, and then look at what the potential is for getting funds that are not tax money, but that come from donations from people and foundations and grants, and then see what the per seat cost is to the taxpayer, I believe we can perhaps pull it down where if it's not less, at least it's comparable. Often you hear people say, oh, you can't do that. it's going to be too expensive. We don't know that until we have done those estimates and done those figures. It has been shown in many studies that children who are exposed to the arts are proven to be better students in other academic areas. And the communities that support the arts have an economic piece, an economic development piece that can be used when they're showing the community to other companies and so forth that are trying to expand in your location. The general public, after this building is restored, could have access to that building at off hours, just as A.L. Brown uses their auditorium. I think it was in the paper the other day how many organizations and how much money had come into that building because of its use by outside organizations. So it can be a part of the support of that school. And it's an intangible element. Something you never can put dollars on, of the community's pride that they got together and they accomplished something, just as we are so proud of the old courthouse. So that's what we've done. We were asked to do it, and now the next steps are up to you, the Board of Education and the staff, and these are the things that I believe, and you may think of others, that you need to be done before anything else happens. First, you have to decide whether you think this is a feasible project. And you have to determine the use for that school, because if we're going to go after grants, we're going to have to be able to be a little specific about what this school is going to do, how many children we anticipate will go there, what they'll be doing, what the special use of that school will be. You need to establish a timeline and put the project wherever you think it belongs in all these myriad other projects that you have. As Lynn said, this has been going on since 2006 maybe, when we built Weddington. I don't remember when Weddington
96.
opened, but I was on the board at the time. It's been constant since then, and it shifts and it moves, and so you'd have to say, well, where can this fit into our plans? When can we use it, and who would be using it, and so forth. You would have to look at the potential sources of funding, the usual ones that you go to, and also the private grants. How much of this project, after you have funding for it, for the preliminary things, how much of this project do we need to go for from the public and from private grants? I'm sure there's going to be all kinds of legalities that enter into this school, particularly if it becomes more of a joint venture with the city involved perhaps, or the community using this building. That's going to put a few more legal issues involved. And then, of course, the commission has to be tremendously involved in this project, and they have to be kept abreast of what you're doing all the way through. And then you need to decide, do you want the Education Foundation to continue to help in whatever way you determine? So it's out of our hands as a foundation at the moment. We'll be glad to take it back if you say that you want us to take it back, and tell us how you want us to take it back. As far as the Education Foundation is concerned, some of us will be bringing forward to the foundation this month that we go ahead and hire a director for the foundation. We don't have one currently, but if we're going to get involved in this and other projects, we need a director for the foundation. We are also ready and prepared to seek private funds to hire a professional person who has the knowledge in restoration that we would need to come here and look at that building and to tell you what the scope of that project would be and come up with a guesstimate of the cost, because until you have those things, you can't really move forward as a board. And this is a different monkey, so it can't be done in the usual way that we've been doing buildings. New buildings and renovation, restoration are two entirely different animals. If you ask us to go ahead and be involved, we would form a steering committee from people in the community. We already have a semi-list of people that we feel would be excellent people on that steering committee, and as the community hears about that, I'm sure there will be others who want to step forward and help. And I would think that the school staff would want to form a committee of teachers, art, music teachers, whoever else would be involved, dance, to work on the plans for the use of that building. So that's my report, and if you want me to stay for questions, I'll be glad to, or I'll turn it over to Dr. Winkler, and he can give you his vision for that school.
Well, Ms. Minot, thank you for the report. I know you spent a lot of time, and I'm sure you had some help doing all this, compile all that you've got for us, and I know that as you mentioned, you know, with us building all the buildings and all the construction and all the things that's been going on with the boards for the last 20 years, this is another item that definitely warrants our attention. And I'm sure there's lots of questions that this board could probably ask to you in the report that you gave. But I'm thinking, though, that a lot of homework's going to have to be done on the school's part at this point. You've got your homework done, and I'm thinking that our education center staff is going to have to look into some of these things and bring some of the legalities, you know, the part about the Education Foundation working with the school system in conjunction together, where the liability is, what the process would be for each, and all those type things. But if the board would like to ask you a question or two real briefly, we can do that, and it would be something that maybe you hadn't thought about or none of us have thought about. So if you have questions at this is an early stage. Dr. Shepard, do you want to make a comment or two before we get started here?
Just to add to what Ms. Minot was saying about the purpose and use of the space, we've talked for a long time about the need for renovation of our elementary schools in the Concord community, Coltrane, Beverly Hills, R. Brown, and even Royal Oaks in the Kannapolis community. When we're doing that work, we're going to need a space for those children to attend school. And so I think one of the more immediate needs for this facility would be, we think it has about 500 seats, 20 classrooms, 25 students per classroom. I think that gets me close. And so if we could prepare the space to receive those children in the interim, and that's Mr. Witke's term of surge space, I believe, if I got that correct, that we could use to move children into and then renovate that facility, their facility, and then move back. We do have tremendous needs here in this county. We're going to hit a growth spurt here, if we haven't already hit it, where we're going to need more seats. And at the same time, we have aging facilities, as we've heard now well, I've been with you for 6 years, and we continue to hear about facilities that are in serious need of repair. So if we can join these ideas together and continue to investigate how long-term we could look at using the auditorium in the school as an arts magnet. My dream is a 3 through 8 arts magnet, but that may not be where the seats are needed at that point. But certainly in the short term, if we could look at preparing this facility to receive students as we work on other facilities, I think it would be a great advantage.
I agree with you, Dr. Shepard. There's no doubt it's viable space. The building structurally is in good shape. And the auditorium, like Ms. Minot said, if you haven't been out to see the auditorium at the old Concord High School, it's a beautiful facility. I mean, it's from the 1930s. This, looks a lot like this one, except it's got a balcony and the high stage. And I mean, it's just a wonderful facility, no doubt. But anyway, I won't elaborate much more because for time. But let's start on my left. Mr. Phillips, do you have any questions for Ms. Minot about the report she gave on the Glenn Center renovation?
Well, actually, Rob and I are both board liaisons to the Cabarrus County Education Foundation, so I've been privy to a lot of these conversations already, so I had a sneak preview, and I appreciate all the work that was done. And I had the opportunity to walk through the building when Ted Alexander, I guess was his name, from Preservation Carolina, was there, and I was really impressed with how clean that building is and really in what fine shape it is. When I went there, I was afraid, we were going to see cobwebs and ceiling tiles falling down. And so it's not going to take as much money as you might initially think to make that a usable school. I think the biggest issue right now is handicap access. And certainly the auditorium itself, if we want it to be a showcase, it needs some upgrading and just new seats, upholstery, and things like that. But I think it's got a lot of promise.
And one of the big things, too, and this has to be obviously considered in whatever we do, and this is very relevant to today's schools when you compare 1930s to 1960s to 2012 and 13. You know, a big cost would be in bringing this building in particular to code. And once you start working on a building, you've got to bring it up to code, whatever the code is then. You know, and there's where a lot of times the price just escalates because of coming into codes that we didn't even know about in the 50s and 60s when we were building the schools that some of you were talking about tonight. These things didn't even come into play back then, but they do today, and you don't get nowhere. And it's a big part. It's a big expense. Okay, Mr. Harrison?
Hi, I'm a board member and former county commissioner. Minot, how are you doing? Very grateful to have you here. Thank you for your fine presentation. Have there been any assessments of what components of the Glenn Center will not need to be renovated? And I'm just trying to pick an example. Are the acoustics in the auditorium such that a lot would not have to be done to make that element of the auditorium more usable? Obviously, coding, wiring and electrical systems and all those would have to be brought up to code. But are there some elements of the building that could be highlighted and explained in some detail that are still structurally sound?
I think there's a lot of the building that is still structurally sound, and I think it can be converted quite easily into usable space for this holding school that Dr. Shepard was talking about. And Len Witke can probably give you more information about the little bit of study that has been done. They have the cost of the elevator, and things of that nature. And I understand that it would be wise to change the entire electrical system at this point rather than doing it piecemeal. So those are issues that I can address. But as far as renovating and what needs to be done to renovate the building thoroughly, that's where I was suggesting, and Ted Alexander suggests, that we get a professional person in who is involved in restoration of old buildings, because it is a different situation than new construction. And that person can look at that building more carefully and kind of give you some estimates on the costs for all of those different things you're talking about.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Mr. Walter, you have any comments or questions to Ms. Minot?
Just a couple. Again, I've had the opportunity to sit down and learn. I mean, the history out there is just amazing to me. I mean, we have a very unique community asset out there that a lot of school systems don't have, and it's got a large alumni base, which is another good thing for it. And you said it was a year ago, I guess, that the board had come up with a resolution that said that the Cabarrus County Board of Education supports the efforts to restore the historic Concord High School, endorses the Cabarrus Education Foundation taking a leading role in the coordinating efforts, and encourages community members to provide financial support for this undertaking. And that was the prior board back in August. So this is your follow-up to that.
Correct. Thank you for when that happened, when that occurred. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think a big thing for that is we don't have to bear the county, and we don't have to bear the full burden of restoring this building if we get the community support and make this a partnership. And that's the aspect I really like about this project.
I agree with you, Mr. Walter. I think it's a very good idea. If we can bring it to fruition, it would be wonderful. Mr. Kiger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Minot, thank you very much for coming and presenting to us. In January of 2011, on a cold day, we rode around in a bus, the previous board, and did a tour. And as part of that tour, we rode by the Glenn Center. We didn't even stop, but we rode by. But the discussion inside the bus was about an arts magnet. And to me, at that time, it made a lot of sense. We had already put in motion some of the precursor of STEM, and knowing we were trying to grab science and technology and engineering. And my one thought when we were doing that, or as that was coming about, was, well, gosh, I hope we don't lose the arts. I can't sing, dance, carry a tune. I can't do any of that. But arts education is a fundamental part of a broad-based education for young people and our students. So at that time, it made sense to me when you came to us to, hey, we think we have enough people that that are interested and want to get involved. That's why we passed that resolution. That makes perfect sense to me. And you've come back now with the one piece that to me is the most important thing of what you said, and that's that the structural engineer has said, we have something we can work with. If we didn't have that, we're just whistling Dixie. But we have that, and so now it makes sense to go forward and see, well, okay, now what are our options? And Mr. Chairman, you're right. Code compliance is a tough part of renovation work. There is a rehab code that's specifically for this type of work. So there is some things and some leeway you get there. The problem is you don't get any leeway on ADA. And how the two are merged together, I'm really not sure, because I haven't had to deal with that specifically, but that will be a constraint or a hurdle that we're going to have to get by. But as far as trying to move forward, I think you've put the ball squarely in our court, figure out where do we want to go and what do we want to do, and what, ultimately, what does it cost, and is it worth doing that? But I think it's certainly, it's well worth pursuing to go forward and see if we can't and do something. And I think your activities, your next steps, I think clearly defined. I think you're dead on. And having some of us on the school side doing a couple things, and also having some on the foundation side, having a director in the steering committee, and even involving staff with music and dance and art teachers, I think all of that plays together well. So hopefully it will end up and we'll have something that we can do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Geiger. And I'll mention this real quickly, and we'll move on to Ms. Carpenter, and that is that schools these days is not the same they used to be. I graduated in 1972 from Central, and things were different then. But today, though, you have to do more. You have to offer more. We're in a more competitive world with K-12, virtual, online education, with more charter schools, more private schools. We're in a more competitive environment. The public education is under attack because of all of these things, and by having the arts program that we're talking about, that is just one more tool in our arsenal of things to keep kids in Cabarrus County schools, which, we're having our campaign, Cabarrus County Schools to Clear Choice, and this is just one more item there. And but I wanted to mention that because I feel like it's important. That's why we do these programs. The other programs you were talking about, the strings program, the dance program, the culinary arts at Hickory Ridge, the Bio Academy at the Kannapolis, the early college in Kannapolis, all of these things are to keep kids in school, and that's what separates Cabarrus County schools from the other districts. And that's why we're proud, I'm proud to be part of Cabarrus County Schools, and all of my family graduated from Cabarrus County Schools, most of them from Central. But anyway, Ms. Carpenter, with your comments to Ms. Minot.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for the excellent job that you and your committees did in the tasks we took you to go out and do. One of the things, first question I have is, what are we going to do with the students we've got there right now? That's the first question, because we do have students there, and we have to make sure we've got somewhere to put them if we do something differently than what we've got. And we do want a well-rounded student, and that's what we would want to see, to offer the arts, because that is a very important thing. And so we would have to make sure we've got somewhere to put those students. But one of the things we have to remember, and I think someone just brought that up, that if we do upgrade that we may need that space for something else for our growth. And I'm glad that we did find out that the building is structurally sound. And we know that we are expanding. So whatever we do, we may end up having to use that for just growth. But we do know that it is sound, and I think that we've proven that we need to look and see what we need to do. I've been in the building many times. It is gorgeous. And I think that our county has shown that we appreciate the arts, that we've seen it with what we've done at Davis. I know that I was a county commissioner. You've been a county commissioner. We knew that when the renovation started at the courthouse, that it was going to be a wonderful experience. But we've seen the arts grow tremendously in this county. And I think that we will continuously to see it grow. But again, we want to thank you, and hopefully we can progress on and see what we can see. And I think there are grants out there. I've been up at the state level, and I think for these type of projects, we can probably get some dollars, and I think there'll be some out there for us if we do it as a community.
Thank you, Ms. Carpenter. Mr. Shoemaker, you have your comments, questions?
Well, everybody said a lot, and so I won't try to rehash, but thank you again for the time that you put into it, for the vision that you have, and for the vision that your board is trying to share with us. You and I have spoken several times about this project, and right now, the way I look at it, I'll just get down to the basics. We really need to hire in a professional, and you thought that there might be some grant money out there that could bring this professional in, and you need to form a team that will develop the scope so the professional will come in and tell us exactly, or at least give us an estimate of how much the cost would be for the building. At the same time, your team needs to know from us and from Dr. Shepard's group what the uses of the building are, so when this person is doing this work, they can factor in the uses into their estimate. Is that correct?
That's correct. We also, and I'm glad you mentioned that there are grants for to hire this professional, because I think that that's a selling point as well. The initial cost of the professional hopefully will be borne by a private entity and not the taxpayer. So the monies that are so tight for all these projects that you have to fund, we would not be asking you for money to hire that professional.
In order for, and in support of what you're saying is, once we have the estimate from this person, then we could then figure out where it fits on the timeline, because then we have to get with the commissioners and talk to them about where the funding would come from and how we would do it, and then there would be some joint funding in this, because again, there could be some other grants that we could tap into that could help offset the cost of the project so the taxpayer doesn't bear much of the cost.
I think we'd turn over every stone that we possibly could. Alumni, businesses, grants, state, local, federal.
How long do you think it would be before you could get your team ready if we could give you enough information to get this professional started so that y'all could create your scope of work?
We can go ahead and investigate the professional, who that would be, and we already have a lead on someone, and what that cost would be. And so, and then also, as soon as you're ready to go and can give us a few more specifics about what you want to do with the building, we can apply for that grant.
So one of the next steps is for us to give you some specifics.
Yes.
You're going to continue.
We can't apply for a grant for the money for the professional until we can be a little more specific than just saying we'd like to do this. That's not going to be enough.
And then the next piece would be for us to give you a definition, and then you will get your team in together and you'll get the professional in, and
right.
Then we could see the results
and
of that.
I'm hoping that our board will vote to move forward with a director. We have the funds in our account to hire a director for a year, so I think that would, for the foundation, and that person, one of their charges would be to do the grants and other things that the foundation can and wants to do.
Right. So I think part of the ball being in our court is, Dr. Shepard, we have to just figure out how we get to the definition to Ms. Minot and her team to see how the Cabarrus Education Foundation can help us out.
That's the homework I was talking about.
Right. But I think that part of our next step is to draw a line in the sand and get moving.
Oh, absolutely.
On this particular thing.
Yes,
and
I agree.
And get this research done, because in order for us to communicate anything to the commissioners, we've got to have this and figure out where it fits into our overall plan for schools and that big old bucket list that's sitting out there. So
Absolutely.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Shoemaker. Ms. Monty, once again, thank you for your hard work and your vision and all that you've done, not only on this project, but many projects in Cabarrus County. I thank you for it.
I appreciate it.
Okay, I'd also like to make mention, tonight we're talking about commissions. I'd like to point out our newly appointed commissioners with us tonight, Jason Osterreich. Jason, if you just raise your hands and let people see who you are, we're glad that you could be a part of our meeting tonight, that you see a little bit what goes on in school board meetings. I hope it's not too boring. Okay, our next item on discussion here, we have Jason Van Hukelum at the podium on his way. We're going to talk about the PLC virtual expansion, which is another tool in our bucket of tools to help keep kids in school.
Yeah. Well,
Jason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Just want to report out to you tonight on the initiative that we started at the Performance Learning Center called Home Reach. And in a nutshell, Home Reach is a virtual extension of the Performance Learning Center, particularly targeted at our homeschool community, which is approximately 2,000 students in Cabarrus County schools. So tonight, the purpose here tonight is just to give you an overview of that work. We're very excited about it. We've had a real positive response from our community, and to date, we have 10 applications already sitting on the desk of Dr. Williams ready to go. What is it? Home Reach is I'm on slide 1, so I know you can't see the slide here, so I'm on slide 1 of our PowerPoint. As you know, the Performance Learning Center operates on a virtual curriculum called APEX. It's a curriculum that we pay for. However, at the Performance Learning Center, that virtual curriculum is surrounded with certified teachers to help guide students along the way. One of the unique aspects of the Performance Learning Center is that it does not require time for time, what we call seat time in high school to earn a credit. So in a very real way, students at the Performance Learning Center work at their own pace through Mastery Learning, and they could earn credits at a quicker rate than potentially students at a traditional high school. And that's a waiver that we received from North Carolina Department of Public Instruction when we opened the school, and that allows us really to extend that virtually to the home environment. Primary intention of Home Reach for our homeschool families is some of the supplemental courses in high school, advanced placement, world languages, and advanced science and maths. We get calls from homeschool families in the past all the time that really wanted an a la carte type menu. They wanted to come and take some of those classes from the school. And their argument typically was, we pay taxes, and I'd like to take AP Biology, or I'd just like to take AP Physics, but I don't want the whole kit and caboodle. Traditionally, we've always said no to that for a variety of I think, very good reasons. But as you know, we're in a very different age, and this is a very different opportunity through the Performance Learning Center. You can imagine if you're a homeschool parent, many of the classes that are required in high school might surpass your own expertise, right? Those maths and science in particular. And again, our target audience here are middle and high school students. I included middle school students here because you do have advanced middle schoolers. So these are 6th, 7th, or 8th graders who are ready and prepared to take high school courses, and they can pursue those courses and even graduate from high school early. And our current students are allowed to do that as well. So here's how it works. I'm on slide number 3 now. Students may enroll at the Performance Learning Center for 2 classes per semester or 4 per year to be considered part-time public school students. In most cases, 99% of the cases we anticipate, those students would only access the campus for their final exams. They would take their classes at home just like they typically do. All they're accessing is our curriculum, which is through APEX, which is an online curriculum. They would have to take their EOCs, end of course tests, any state mandated test, or any common exam, depending on the course that they're enrolled in. So at that time, they would have to come in and take that at the PLC. In addition, for example, advanced placement classes. So if they were enrolled in an AP class, they would also come in and take their AP class. In conjunction and working with the homeschools, we would issue a certificate of completion with their grade. And that would be for transcript purposes. And in a sense, we would have students that are part-time enrolled in a homeschool and part-time enrolled in a public school. We would keep 2 transcripts, and as I'll explain later, at some point there has to be a decision upon where the student will graduate from. But students would be able to graduate from either the Performance Learning Center or the homeschool, provided they met the appropriate requirements. In this particular setting, here's how our curriculum would work, and I'm on to the next slide. As you know, in our traditional schools, in every single school here in Cabarrus County. We follow the Common Core standards, and we also follow the North Carolina Essential Standards. And Common Core, English and Math, and the rest have North Carolina Essential Standards. Then we write local curriculum by our teachers, and that's the curriculum from which we teach to accomplish those standards, and then that's taught by a teacher and delivered to a student. Okay, that's a traditional model. In this model, it would follow a very similar model, except instead of your curriculum that's locally written by Cabarrus County teachers, we would use Apex Learning as the curriculum, and that's the online curriculum we currently use at Performance Learning Center. In this case, the parent really serves as that facilitator of instruction because these families have the support networks in place for their children to be successful, and that is then delivered to the student. Here's a graphic on the next slide that kind of shows the bridge between homeschool and Cabarrus County schools. And really you're looking at, in the middle there, Apex courses that satisfy both requirements. Okay, so homeschool families will be able to look at a menu of courses for their high school offerings and choose from that menu courses that satisfy both diploma tracks. Okay, and then at some point, onto the next slide, a family's going to have to make a choice because we have some requirements in Cabarrus County that may not be the same as a homeschool diploma. And so I anticipate as a student would travel through this program if they were to start in 9th grade, potentially in 11th grade is most likely where that decision point would have to come, where they're going to have to say, I choose a homeschool diploma or I'm going to choose a Cabarrus County Schools diploma. We would work with them on that decision with our counselors at the Performance Learning Center and Dr. Williams, analyze those transcripts to ensure that they're appropriate and make that decision for the child moving into graduation. And then at that point, right before graduation, they would withdraw from the school in which they're not going to receive the diploma. So if I'm a homeschool student and I want to get a Cabarrus County diploma, I would withdraw from my homeschool. If I'm a Cabarrus County student and want to continue with my homeschool, I would withdraw from the Cabarrus County school. That protects us from dropouts, right? So we're protecting ourselves from the data point of dropouts there. Why would we do this? So a couple reasons I think we would do this is, number one, I do think we have a common objective. We want to produce citizens of Cabarrus County that are great kids, that are highly educated and can participate in our democracy. And so when we put up a wall between our homeschool families and our public schools, we're not assisting in that endeavor, which I believe is a common objective for all of us. We talk a lot about responsiveness in this day and age. We understand that as a public school, we have to be relevant to our community. With 2,000 homeschool students, approximately 7% of our population has chosen not to attend homeschool, or not to attend Cabarrus County schools for a variety of reasons. And so it's a new day, and we're very aware of that, and we need to be responsive to our community, and this is one way we can do that. I believe it aligns with some of the new values that are emerging within education in general. And the number one value that I think is emerging is that we're beginning to realize that learning is not a function of time and space. And so we're beginning to understand that the learning of a particular content doesn't necessarily have to take 90 minutes a day for 90 days. That seat time requirement is continually being questioned at the national level, at the state level, and all of the thinking on education, and this really aligns with that new value. And finally, we have an invested interest financially in that, and I think our homeschool families do as well. I had a great meeting with our homeschool families last week, and what a great group of families that we talked with, Dr. Williams and I, about Home Reach. Number one, we do receive revenue for these students because they are students of Cabarrus County schools once they enroll and meet the requirements. In addition, if you think of yourself as a homeschool parent, you're kind of getting something you already paid for with your taxes, right? And so many of them, as we talked to them, said, wow, this is great. You know, and we kind of resent the fact that we've paid taxes all along and we don't get to access many of the things that a public school has because of our particular values in our home or our decision to homeschool our particular child. So they have a vested interest as well. Lastly, I just want to highlight, the primary question in developing Home Reach was this question of dual enrollment. In other words, the question is, can a child be enrolled in two different schools at the same time? And so here you have an excerpt from the Non-Public Schools Handbook. In addition, our research included talking with our own local attorneys, talking with the Department of Public Instruction in Raleigh. We talked with the Department of Non-Public Schools, which governs private and home schools, to make sure that we were indeed allowed to do this, and the answer came back from all of those entities was yes. Another way to think of this is we currently do this with dual enrollment at our community colleges. So we have students who are dually enrolled. They attend Cabarrus County schools, and they also attend RCCC. Both institutions receive funding for those children that are dually enrolled. Here's just a quick timeline. Of course, we've done many of these steps already. I referenced our meeting last week with homeschool families, and again, just want to highlight what a positive meeting that was. The primary barrier at this point is the timing. I had several families come up and say, I wish I had known this a month ago before I went and bought all my homeschool material for the year. And many of them said that this would be an initiative that would be very appealing for many families in the coming year. Our hope this year is to get maybe 30 students to try this out this year. We currently, like I said, have 10, and that's with an application window of only 3 days being open. So we're very excited about it. Dr. Williams is doing a great job administering that program in its launch at the PLC. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay, board members, if you have any questions, now would be the time to ask Dr. Van Hukelum. We'll start on Mr. Shoemaker's side. Do you have any questions about the virtual PLC?
Mr. Van Hukelum, did you just say that right now you have 10 that have actually signed on to this dual enrollment?
10 students have applied. So students are going to have to go through the same application process that we do with any PLC student. And one of the things that includes a sit-down meeting with Dr. Williams to ensure that the student has the appropriate supports at home, that we analyze transcripts like we would do with any other student. If a student comes in and says, I want to take AP Biology, it's on us to ensure that kid is ready for AP Biology. So we have to do some testing sometimes. We have to analyze transcripts and go through a process before we kind of say yes on our side. But 10 students have applied and are in process to start.
So if the student is not ready for the advanced biology course,
sure.
AP Biology, are there remedial, that's really the wrong word, but
right.
Are there lower level courses that they could attend in the online arena that would get them prepared for this one so that they could still do it at home and still have the benefit of doing everything online if that's what they choose to do?
Yes.
Okay. Do all of the online courses have the EOC, EOG component to them, or is it only specialized courses that deal with that?
So they'd be the same as our courses. So for high school, you're looking at Algebra 1 will have an EOC, Biology will have an EOC, English 2 would have an EOC. So those would be our 3 end-of-course tests. In addition, you have many other classes in our traditional high schools that have the new common exam, which we gave for the first time last year. So any one of those courses that have a common exam, they would also have to come to school and take that common exam. And then, of course, your AP tests have a standardized exam as well.
So not all online courses have it, but there are many that do.
Yeah.
And as the homeschool families get involved, they understand that there are these requirements to take these courses once they've enrolled in these courses.
Yeah, it is a requirement because technically they're one of our students. And the Performance Learning Center for the EOCs, for example, would own those scores. And so it also leads to that vested interest of the school in making sure those students are going to be successful because they are our students just like any other student.
Will you have another meeting of these parents or another interest meeting in the next semester? Because some people renew in different cycles, I would think.
Yeah, they're going to follow right along with our magnet program. So we have a schedule, starts really in January, of open houses for all of our magnet schools, and the PLC falls right in there. So that's when we would do a beginner outreach for second semester and also for the following year.
What other activities will homeschool children be eligible to participate in? Because
Sure.
some schools have different from athletics on into the arts and then just clubs and things. Will they be able to participate in clubs and and those types of things if they so desire?
So it's important to recognize they're students at the Performance Learning Center. So they'll be able to access the clubs at the Performance Learning Center. They'll be able to access a social event from the Performance Learning Center. But the Performance Learning Center does not have, for example, athletics. It does not have a band. Doesn't have many of the big traditional high school type things. So they would not be able to say, oh, I live in Central's district, I'm going to go play football for Central, because our current students at the PLC are not allowed to do that as well. Yeah.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shoemaker. Mr. Carpenter, you have questions?
Well, one of my questions is, are they going to be able to be counted in our ADM?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay, they will be able to.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll get the dollars for them.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, okay. That's what I was wondering if they would be. Do they have any criteria? I mean, are they just automatically going to be able? Do they have to have so many credits to be? Is it just the 2 credits? They got to have the 2 credits.
Exactly.
I mean, a child couldn't come in and say, oh, I just want to take biology. That's all I want to take. Or they have to have the 2 credits.
They have to take 2 credits per semester to qualify as a part-time student. So it does require this level of commitment on the part of the family. In a sense, they're committing to taking 4 classes for the year, 2 fall semester, 2 in the spring, or potentially they could take 4 altogether throughout the course of the year. But that's the half-time mark for a student to be considered a full-time student.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Carpenter. And just for the record, too, Mr. Van Hukelum, I don't know whether you explained a lot about the Performance Learning Center, what it is. Most people are sitting out here wondering, what is the Performance Learning Center?
Sure.
The viewing audience is probably asking. So maybe can you give a extremely brief overview of what the Performance Learning Center is? Because I know we've had the graduations. I know we've saved kids that otherwise would have dropped out. But if you will, just from a short.
Yeah, sure. Performance Learning Center is a school we're really proud of, just in the innovative concept. And like you said, it's really provided a safe place for kids who didn't fit in a traditional school. Kids who have high aptitude, who have maybe some home circumstances that are preventing them from being successful at a traditional school, and so they go to the Performance Learning Center school. Again, one of the key components is they work at their own pace through a virtual curriculum with caring teachers that facilitate their learning. They've been very successful, and kids love it. Yeah.
I agree. I mean, we've been over there for meetings, and those kids love it, and they just could not praise the school enough for offering them another opportunity to help them get through high school.
Yeah.
They didn't adapt well in the traditional school, as you said. This made it more adaptable to them. Therefore, they got to graduate, and they could continue their endeavors. Some go to college, some got grants, and all of that. Otherwise, they would have been through the cracks. We would have lost them. So this is another tool in our arsenal of bags to keep kids in school. Mr. Kiger, you have any comments?
Can I make a comment?
Yes, Ms. Carpenter.
We were really fortunate to get this. This school was originally, we were fortunate to get it because it was going to go to another county, and originally it was funded by the Gates Foundation in cooperation with communities and schools as a joint venture. And it was going to go to another county, and they could not get everything together. And it was just came to us and said, hey, we just had 4 or 5 months to get everything together to get it started. And it was a joint cooperation, and communities and schools and the Gates Foundation helped us get it started when we started the school. And we still coordinate with getting some funding with communities and school, and still working with a partnership with them to make this happen. And it has just been wonderful, wonderful experience.
Absolutely. I agree with you, Ms. Carpenter. And if I'm not mistaken, if Mr. Williams were here, he could tell us, and Dr. Shepard may be able to tell us, but I think that we graduated 50, 60 students this year. And otherwise we would have lost. Mr. Kiger, you want to carry on with your comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was not aware that the Gates Foundation was part of the the founding of that. That's interesting. It is, when we go to the luncheon, my recommendation is we bring more Kleenex next year when they tell their stories of how they got there. This is really off of subject of this, but I think it bears repeating that, there's a lot of students out there. You just can't put them on the treadmill in first grade and hope they hop off in 12th grade where we think they should be. They don't all fit that mold. And so the PLC, the early college, some of these things that we do is our attempt to respond to the marketplace of what parents need and want and what students need to be able to be successful. And so in light of that, with the presentation that you've made, I think it's an absolute total home run. There are multitudes of reasons to homeschool, and for what one of the great things about where we live, you get to decide what's best for you and your family. That's right. And if homeschooling is what you think is best, well, then you do what you think you need to do to educate your children. In this day and age, with computers and technology, to be able to provide something to supplement what they're doing, and it's us being a good steward in our community, along with parents trying to figure out what's the best for their students. I think it's exactly the way to go. I think I think you were right in your assessment of middle school, because one of the main things to me, I think that's part of the homeschool movement is pace. A lot of kids that are bright don't want to get held back, and a lot of kids that aren't bright don't want to get left behind. So they get to work and figure out what pace works for them. Well, I think you're going to see kids at a younger age trying to grab some of those upper level courses, and when you go to try to figure out whether they're ready or not, I think we'll be surprised that, hey, they're ready, and if we can offer that and they want to do it, I certainly think we should do it. One quick question or two, just the diploma, it says Cabarrus County Schools, it's not different. I mean, I'm trying to think, do they say, they say each individual school, does it say Performance Learning Center? Okay, so they'll just have to decide at some point which way they want to go. And I think that, again, that's up to them. We've done what we've tried to do to make it work. And as far as dual enrollment, we're already doing that, really, I guess, sort of at early college.
Right.
You're kind of in a college and in a high school at the same time. So clearly, to me, the precedent is there. I'd be willing to argue that we're already doing it, so I don't see a problem there. And that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Kiger. Mr. Walter, you have comments, questions?
Jason, thank you again for that presentation. Any other school systems in North Carolina doing this?
Yes, Iredell Statesville started this. They have 30, I think the last count was 30-plus students that are doing. They call it their iAcademy.
Is this their first year as well, or is this?
It's their first year as well. Yeah.
So we're leading in North Carolina here, Cabarrus County Schools. This is a leading.
In the newspaper, I believe last week, CMS came out and said they're going to have a virtual high school by, I believe, second semester or something.
So we're ahead of the curve here.
We are ahead of the curve. Yes, sir.
A little bit more. Tell me more about this Apex. We're using it now for PLC folks.
So if you were to go online and search for online high schools or online curriculum, you're going to find a plethora of different vendors out there. Apex is the one we've chosen to work with. It is a mastery-based program where students work through an online forum. They receive their content online. They watch videos. They read text. They read their primary sources and their documents. And then they take a series of quizzes and tests to determine whether they've mastered that particular module from a course. So a course may have upwards of 10 modules to get through, and that's how they demonstrate their mastery.
Okay, is there a cost per student for them to?
We do pay, and I don't have Ben, I don't know if you know the cost. $250 per course or per student? Per student. Yeah.
Okay, and then counting that for the ADM, what funds do we get from the ADM per student?
Well, we get close to $6,000 per, local and state.
Okay. My thought process here being that some of these parents, as you mentioned, that there's an issue over dollars already purchased for this curriculum. Is there a way we as a board can approve an incentive of some sort to get them to sign up here if you're looking for 1% of the total homeschool population out there to participate?
Yeah.
$500 or whatever it happens to be to help offset if they sign up by this deadline.
I don't know if you could approve that type of incentive. I'll tell you some of the things we've talked about in the early conversations. For example, because of the distance, right, between our cost and our ADM drawdown from the state, we've said things like, well, what's stopping us from providing those students with their own computer for the year? And say, okay, if you sign up, you're going to get a computer. It's our computer, but you get it, a one-to-one. There's many school systems that do that already and send it home. Central does that with their STEM program with iPads. As a type of incentive for families to say, oh, I get a MacBook Air out of the deal. I got to bring it back at the end of the year. But to really honor the fact that it is a very cost-effective way of educating students. In addition to that, another idea that we've talked about, Dr. Williams, is providing, the PLC only goes to school from Monday through Thursday, right? So Friday, we don't have students at the PLC. So what's stopping us from having on Friday some homeschool connection for those families? For example, in particular, they voiced a need for science labs, right? So to do their wet labs on Friday with one of our teachers that we pay. And as we enroll students, we would have a budget by which we can provide some of those services for our homeschool families. I do see that happening in the future. As a way to kind of incentivize the program.
That's good. Last question I had is talk to me more about how the dropout rate, how if they change and they decide they want to graduate as a homeschooler, that doesn't affect our dropout.
Sure. So as you partner between the two schools, we're going to keep two separate transcripts. You're going to have classes that a student takes on the homeschool side, and we're going to review that transcript on a semester basis, and then we're going to have classes that they take with us. And the counselor at the PLC will work with that family on an individual basis to make sure they're meeting the requirements for both diplomas. At some point, there may come a time in a student's career where it's a choice they're going to make, and that choice will eliminate them potentially from the Cabarrus County diploma. And at that point, they'll have to, we're going to say, okay, now you understand by making this choice, you're now kind of ineligible for a Cabarrus County diploma. And then they can continue in home reach and take those classes, but before graduation, they're going to have to officially withdraw from Cabarrus County Schools and graduate from their homeschool entity with
So as long as they graduate,
exactly.
It's not counted as a dropout.
As long as they withdraw to another diploma-bearing institution, yes.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it looks like a win-win situation for both the families and for us. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Walter. Mr. Harrison, do you have any questions?
Often I've heard this program or programs like this summed up by being an alternative for kids who learn differently, but who still have the drive and the motivation to learn. And at the risk of giving too much of a testimonial, I read from right to left, and not well. My joke is that I am dyslexic. It's supposed to be funny, but I am dyslexic, and the program, the PLC, as well as the the home reach, blending of those two efforts and those two programs really does answer a need to help kids figure out that kind of learning style that usually is an impediment to them when they don't understand themselves to begin with. They need some kind of program like that to help them, give them the right environment, as well as help them understand how to learn so that they do succeed. So you're doing a great service for the county and the children here in the county. I'd like to suggest, if it's at all possible or feasible at this point, I know your window is ending on the 11th.
Right.
It is educationally sound and met all the right schedule of beginning the programs. I'm wondering if it's feasible to extend that deadline. But again, I hope you have the demand out there that you're trying to process, but still can open up the application process a bit further if you can, or give a greater window, or I don't mean advertise, but communicate more to the homeschool community so that they can understand the opportunity that's available to them. And maybe I'm either behind the times or am confusing things. You've referred to the APEX program as a menu or course of study of online classes. Is that the only online program that we use, or is there a summer school type of online study that to my mind sounds, maybe it's not, but it sounds duplicative if we have other options available to us? And maybe in the future we can discuss the online options that we have, but if we're using APEX for this, there are other online programs that we use for other purposes. Possibly you could help us at some time.
Sure.
Get a handle on and hopefully reduce expenses or coordinate services better for those.
Yeah, and we do have several different online options. They serve different purposes. APEX is at the PLC. We use a program called Odysseyware, which is primarily for credit recovery, which means a student has already taken the course and failed it, and now they're getting that credit back through a credit recovery type model. Of course, we also have the North Carolina Virtual Public School.
That's the one I was thinking of. I didn't know what was still.
And so there's differences with each of those programs. So just in a nutshell, APEX. The reason we like APEX is for its rigor. It was designed by one of the founders of Microsoft, and its initial design was for AP courses for rural communities. So basically saying if you're in a rural community and you don't have enough kids to take AP biology, or a qualified teacher is there to help you. So we like the rigor of APEX. Odysseyware is we use a lot with our credit recovery. Again, those students have already taken a course and failed it. And they can work through that program. And then VPS, the uniqueness about VPS is that it is time sensitive. So Odysseyware and APEX are mastery based, and you can work at your own pace. VPS, you can't work at your own pace. You have a quiz on Friday, and you got to take the quiz on Friday because there's a teacher, a literal physical teacher on the other end of that computer giving you assignments, grading your assignments. It's just virtual. So they serve different functions. Having said that, we do anticipate doing a fair, similar to what we did with our math textbook adoption this year, bringing in online vendors and really going, we haven't done that in a while, and vetting more vendors to see if we're meeting the needs that we currently have with our current vendors. So.
And I'm just generally suggesting that there were any way to streamline those different programs if it were feasible. Because one size doesn't fit all, and each of those programs answers a specific need, but possibly we could consider better use of resources if there is any possibility of that.
Okay, we'll do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Mr. Phillips, do you have any questions, comments?
I like it. I applaud what you've done, and I applaud Dr. Shepard for moving forward with this. It's very innovative, and I think it's definitely called for. While I firmly believe that even if we don't have a child in the Cabarrus County schools, everyone in Cabarrus County has a vested interest in seeing that we have a good school district. I certainly am sympathetic to the parents of homeschoolers who are saying, hey, we're paying taxes and not getting anything for it. Well, the fact is you are getting something for it. You have a county that's known for having a very good school system, which raises your home values. But anything that we can do to help them feel more vested in this school district is in everyone's interest, and so I'm glad to see that this is happening. I had one question. You may have already answered it, but I may have lost my concentration when this bowl of candy came by, and I missed it. But is there a limit to the number of classes? You said they have to take at least 2. Can they take all of their classes this way?
Yes. Yeah.
They could?
Absolutely.
Okay. But still be considered homeschool, even if they're not really.
That's a good question. If they're taking all of their classes and not taking any classes from a homeschool, in a sense, they're just taking public school classes at home. I haven't crossed that bridge yet. I don't know how that would work. They'd still get the benefits of being at home and some of the reasons why they homeschool their students for a variety of reasons. It's in their home, the parent being the facilitator. I don't know. That's a good question. I'll have to look at that. I haven't had to deal with that one yet.
Okay. You can have a piece of candy and think about it.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. And thank you, Jason, for bringing this report to us, and we look forward to seeing it get off to the ground, get started. Okay, board members, we're going to move on to our next item on the agenda. It's 4.5. and that's when Mr. Witke's going to come and talk to us about a proposed bond referendum. And while he's coming, I want to read the public content, not only for you folks that are here tonight, but for the viewing audience, because this is not something that has been taken lightly. About this time last year, the board asked a company called ORED, which is an independent third-party consultant, the anticipated growth in population over the next 10 years within the county will have a significant impact on the number of school-aged children that will reside in the county and will need to be accommodated in the public school system. The increase in the number of students in the district will grow each year, adding to the current crowded conditions that we have now in several existing schools. Growth coupled with long-term deferred maintenance of the existing facilities has created a substantial funding need. Plans must be made now to have a successful bond referendum in 2014 so that funds will be made available by spring of 2016. Depending on the funding amount, the district should plan for at least one new elementary school, 2 replacement schools, and renovations to several other existing schools in the district. Although this list of projects will not address all of the district's capital needs, the superintendent does recommend consideration of the proposed projects in an effort to identify the district's highest needs for the bond referendum. And also, I wanted to make mention that it's made note by the county commissioner that they will not support a bond referendum that would increase property taxes at this time. So I wanted to read that to give you a little bit of preference about what Mr. Witke's going to talk to us about. And so, Mr. Witke, whenever you and Dave get ready, we'll do this on the bond referendum. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.